seems legit.
Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today we are making the Derica handbag. This was really fun to make. I've given it a kind of retro rockabilly feel with my glitter vinyl and horror themed fabric. But it was pretty good to do. I do have a lot of stops and starts. I didn't have the stuff to put in the handle, so I had to go shopping for that. Hubby came home. I forgot my hardware, like all of it. I don't know where my brain was at this morning. But the bags still come out really cool. It's like a nice long skinny bag. It is a big arm handbag, but I really like it. I put the outer pocket on the inside. And it's got like these cool two flaps. I also use rivet magnets. So if you are following along with this tutorial, just make sure you put your magnets in before you top stitch these. And I wanted to do that at the start. But there's my pocket that I've stitched down the center to have like two slip pockets and a zipper pocket. So if you want to see how to make this bag, please stay tuned. Alrighty, so let's get started. Here's all my pieces. And I have the printed out version of the pattern for when and if I get stuck. This piece I can tell is my base. All the other pieces I have clipped the panels to what they're actually called. So that's going to help. So we're going to start with main panel. These are all my main panels. This is my exterior. And so that one's going to be the front because it's fabulous. And this one is slightly less fabulous, so I've decided that will be the back. Actually, let's start with the slip pocket because that's pretty easy. So we're going to just put these right sides together. Now I always put the lightest fabric on the bottom when I sew. I'm not sure if I've ever told you that before, but I'm going to tell you now. So I'm going to line up the two end points and then we just kind of clip in between like, oops, like so. So I'm just going to, I'm on 2.5 for my stitch length. And I'm going to stitch and back stitch. Feels a bit weird. I've still got shoes on. I forgot to take my shoes off before I started my video. I never sew in shoes, for those that don't know that. I feel like I have more control over the foot pedal in bare feet. That's just me. I quite often use my toe, like my big toe, as my presser. My bin's also on the wrong side, so let me just scoot that round to the right side. I like it at the end so I can just push the rubbish off the table. Makes me happy. Alright. I'm going to grab my zigzag scissors. And the reason I'm using zigzag scissors is because this is a curve and I want to make sure it's going to be nice. So this fabric, I don't actually remember where I got it. I think it was like eBay or something. It was just like a random buy because I thought it was cool. And this is the lime green waterproof canvas. Not as popular as the other greens, but I personally quite like it. So because it's waterproof canvas, I'm not going to need to use an iron. I can actually just kind of push it over and clip it. But if both of your layers are fabric, like cotton fabric, you're going to want to iron this so you get a nice crease. So I'm going to go up to a 4 stitch length and then I'm going to top stitch at 1/8 of an inch from that edge. Like so. And I back stitch at both ends because I always back stitch. Boom! Slip pocket. This was cut out so long ago, I don't really know what's going on, if I'm honest. Sometimes it's good to be prepared, and then sometimes you get so far ahead of yourself, you don't remember what's going on. So I just assume the slip pocket goes on the inside, but I suppose you could also put it on the back on the outside. I could read the pattern, but I like it. I like slip pockets on the inside. Keeps my stuff more organized. And because I've got waterproof canvas touching each other, it's a bit slippery. So wonder clips are your friends. And I'm just going to clip this all together. You don't need a lot of clips, just enough to make sure it's not going to shift. So now I'm just going to baste this on. So basting, for those that don't know, just means to sew it on in place within a seam allowance as a temporary hold. Needle down, pivot around. And again, this line doesn't have to be perfectly neat, although if you are new to sewing, it's a good way to practice, because even if it's wrong, nobody's going to see it. And I just ran out of bobbin thread. Of course I did. Alright, I'm going to hit pause while I do another one, and then we'll continue on. Bobbin is redone. So I'm not even going to bother about basting that because it's only this much. And again, it's basting, not a permanent hold. So I'm going to fold this in half, line up edge to edge, clip with a tiny little, creating a tiny little triangle. So just a small clip. And then I'm going to sew from, you always sew pockets bottom to top. Because this way, if you started here and you didn't line it up perfectly, you'll get a bubble at the bottom. So that's why we do it. Up, and then we're going to back stitch twice because that up there is a stress point and we don't want it to break. Ta-da! Slip pocket. Looks awesome. What else have we got in here? These look like Tory pockets. Excellent. I don't need that bit anymore. That's just that's the cutting list. I like that there's a cutting list, but it does waste a lot of color ink if you're going to print it out in color. So just a thought about that there. These are my sides and these are my sides, so they can kind of get pinned together so I know what's going on. I also have a zipper overlay here. So let's do that. I might put that on the back on the outside. I'm just pulling all the pieces out at this point because it's easier. Here's my handles. Ooh, must be doing rolled handles. I'll have to get some stuff for that. That's all right. So let's start with this piece. This is called piece B. So this is the middle part of our flap. Now because I'm using vinyl, I can just put them together and stitch around. So I know I've created a mess now, but I can kind of see more about what's going on. So to hold these in place, you can either use some glue if you use glue. I personally don't have time to wait for glue to dry. I'm an impatient person, or more specifically, I'm busy. So we're going to peel those off, and then we're going to line it up like so, and then squish it flat. And I'm going to go up to a 4 stitch length, so it's nice and big and chunky, and I'm going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch from the edge, which is half of my foot, or thereabouts. So you can do whichever makes you more comfortable. And then down, pivot, up the other way. And back stitch. We always do that slowly. So that come out quite nice. So see how there's just a little bit of overhang? We're just going to take some scissors and just trim it. And it's the most minute amount, and yet it will annoy me. So off it comes. So this will just make sure that both sides are perfectly even. Also, if you were going to edge coat this, it would make it much, much easier. Because then they'd be even. So what I'm cutting off is like barely visible to the eye, but I'm still going to do it because because it's going to look better. So there we go. Another option of doing that is you cut one and then have the other bit like way bigger, and then you can just stick that on wherever, stitch around it, and then just cut it out. That's another way I do things sometimes, because it is much easier if you're trying to get them perfectly level. So I imagine the next one's this one. So let's do this one. This is our second handle piece. You have to cut this one on the fold, but I don't tend to fold vinyl, so I put it over and then fold it that way. But we're going to do this exactly the same thing. So, double-sided tape. I'm just going to put a big piece diagonally like that. It's not going to be very slippery, this stuff, so I'm not super worried. There we go. Giant diagonals. Peel off the backing. Good. And then we're going to just go around and line it up. So I'm going to start here. Maybe I'm going to start there. So this is where accurate cutting really comes in handy. I'm going to flip it this side. Now that I've stuck it down, you can see I have not cut it perfectly. But that's okay. I'm going to trim it now. Just to make sure that it all lines up. And then flip it over, and then here's a little bit out. I mean, it's not too bad, but it's just these little kind of bits that will make it that much better. This will just elevate it to a more professional look. Alright, I'm pretty happy with that. So now let's stitch this one. So I'm going to stitch the outside, and then I want to come in and do this inside bit. Or you can do it in reverse. Doesn't matter if you do the outside or the inside first, in my opinion. Do whatever you want. What you don't want to do is rush your top stitching. So even though I've got shoes on, we're going nice and steady. Back stitch. Right, inside. Back stitch. I didn't actually mean to stop then. It's my shoes. They're messing with my sewing. I should have taken them off when I did a bobbin. Didn't even think of it. I don't mess with the speed on my machine. I just leave it on full and use my foot. And I know I could, but then I have to constantly remember to turn it up and down, and that's just less fun. If you're super new to sewing, a speed control is good, but I'm not really that new anymore. Alright, so that's that one, and then the other one will sit in between like that, and so that's how they will go, which is fabulous. I love them. Alright, let's do our handles. So the first thing we're going to do is take this end bit and some double-sided tape, like always, and we're going to stick the end on. because the end is important. So we're going to do all the ends. I will get to a point soon where I'm going to need to look up the pattern, but for now, I think we're doing okay. Right. So now we take the backing off, and then we just line this up and stick it down. Other sides. So this will both make it thicker and nicer on the ends. So don't skip this step. Unless you're using leather, in which case you might not need to do this, depending on how the back of the leather looks. Alright, so I'm going to start here, and I'm just going to top stitch around. So we're going to go here, stitch, back stitch. Needle down, pivot, across, pivot up, back stitch, and then we're going to chain stitch. So we're going to grab the next one, do the same thing. Start here, stitch, round, needle down, pivot. Now that I can get to it, you can trim off the other one. And then around this end. And the next one. So by chain stitching these, you actually use less thread, which is always good. And you have less tails around, right? Because that's just it. It also saves time too. I mean, unless you've got a machine where you can just have an automatic thread cutter. But even then. Doing a stitch, back stitch, go around, needle down, pivot across, up, and back stitch. So that is now our 4 ends on, and I can just cut off those first lot of tails. So now what we're going to do, we're going to get some piping cord. I'm not sure if mine's going to be thick enough. I think I need thicker piping cord. That's not going to be thick enough. So I'm going to need to pause the video and go buy some piping cord. That's put like a dampener on my moment. What have I got to use instead? Another really good thing, actually I might go buy some, is tubing, like plastic tubing they use for fish tanks. That's also going to work. So I might have to go get some of that. So we'll just put that aside. And I'll sew as much as I can before I have to go to the shops. Not really what I plan to do today, but that's right. That's what happens when I don't fully prepare myself. So this is the base. So this base can be stuck to the side where we've already done a pocket, because that makes sense. And I'm just eliminating pattern pieces at the moment. You can very clearly tell I'm not following the pattern, but I like to just eliminate pieces. It's the way I operate. It helps my brain. Less pieces to look at, easier it is to think. So we're going to stitch, we're going to go back to a joining stitch length is actually what we're going to do. Stitch, back stitch, and then just hoon along there. And back stitch. Okay. Now we're getting somewhere. Alright, we have our 2 Tory pocket pieces. we need this piece because it's got the mark for our diagonal pockets. So what I might do is cut out that section. So these are my paper cutting scissors before anybody freaks out. So I'm just going to cut this bit out. Right. So that now I can lay this against the edge like so, and that's where one of my pockets is going to go. So I'm going to take something erasable. So this is a chalk or Chaco pen. It's technically a chalk wheel, but whatever. Go down one side, down the other side, across the bottom. So that's where one of my pockets will be. So that's going to be this one. We're going to fold this over. Then I'm going to line this up with the chalk parts. So that to there, following down, and that to there. So that's where the pocket's going to lie. So now, anywhere that the fabric intersects with the main panel, or my pocket intersects with the main panel, I'm going to add some clips. This is going to stop it from squirming and moving while I'm trying to sew it. So we've got quite a lot of points. I can now lift that up and throw it around, and we're not going to have an issue. So, I am only going to stitch the long lines. We're not going to stitch the short ones. So we're going to stitch, back stitch, and then off we go. Back stitch, pivot it around, and then we're going to jump to the second line. Don't worry about that jump stitch, we will deal with it, I promise. So we're going to stitch and back stitch, and that's going to lock in those stitches so that nothing comes undone on us. And I'm just sewing right on the line that I drew. Now this is a 1/2 inch hole because I'm using a size 5 zipper tape. If you are going to use a size 3 zipper tape, which is like a dress zip from, you know, Spotlight, do 3/8 of a gap. 3/8 of an inch gap, you know what I mean. Right, so that's one side on. I'm just gonna bring that down and clip it over like that for now so that I can do my other side. And you may be wondering, why didn't I mark this chalk line on before? And the simple answer is it would have rubbed off. Played that game before, don't really want to play it again. So line it up along the edges, and then we're going to draw the rectangle. Right, sorted. Next pocket piece. So again, I always fold it in half, like so. And if I fold it now, it's just easier later when I'm trying to do other stuff. So we're going to line up this top edge with that top edge. Clip, clip. And then make sure that that's following that same angle, because that's obviously very important. And then clip, and clip. And one more there. And that should just about do it. So now we're going to do the same thing. Needle in that corner point, foot down or press a foot down, pedal to the metal, and off we go. If you ever need to practice straight lines, get a blunt needle no thread and lined paper, and just follow the lines on the lined paper. It's a good way to get faster at straight lines. Just if anybody wants to, you know, hone their skills a bit more. But you use a dead needle because puncturing paper will blunten the needle that's in. So if you use a dead one, then no harm, no foul. You don't even need to use thread. You just punch the holes. It's all about the practice. All right, take off all the clips. All the clips. All right, so now I'm going to fold this over so that I can get my scissors. Actually, no, I lied. I'm going to take a craft knife and I'm going to cut the foam out of here. Now, some people like to do it first. The reason I don't is because generally speaking, it's harder to line up the pocket exactly over where you've already cut it. So by doing it my way, you guarantee that it's going to be in the middle. The downside is my way is a little bit more fiddly, but you get better results. So choice is yours. So now that I've used that, I can just take the scissors and come in and cut the other side off. By eliminating this foam, it's going to make it easier to turn the pocket, is pretty much what's going on here. It's not always the neatest, but we just essentially got to cut the crap out. Chop the other end. Now it is fused on, which is why it looks a bit messy. And again, you can do it the other way, but I'm happy with my way. So craft knife again, cut the short end. Now you want to push firmly, but not so firmly you're going to cut through all the layers. We are only trying to cut through the foam layer. And then the other end. Like that. And sometimes, depending on how well you ironed your interfacing, like the foam to the bag, sometimes it will come away easily. Sometimes you've got to pull away that glue. So, it's a bit of a hit and miss. But, my results are still glorious. So, because if you do it after you've already cut that center bit, it's even harder than it currently looks. This is not hard, it's just a little bit fiddly because I've melted the interfacing on really well. So it just takes a little bit extra to get it up, but nothing I can't handle. Done! So now when I cut these and turn them through, they're not going to be insanely bulky to try and cut. So I'm going to fold this over, make a snip, and then cut approximately in the middle, and then when I get to about 3/4 of an inch from the end, I'm going to triangle out these ends. Now, little tip, the longer the triangle, the easier it's going to be to catch it when we're top stitching around. So you don't want like a 1/4 inch triangle, you want a long one. It's just going to be easier to sew. You need to trust me on that. Because I've done some short ones before, and the fiddling that you do to make sure that they are tucked away is not worth it. So we're going to snip here, maybe. There we go. So we're doing the same to both pockets. 1 and 2. And 1 and 2. Then I'm going to fold this up and then fold this one down, and then same to this. So I'm trying to put a crease in my waterproof canvas. If you're using a cotton for your pockets, you'll want to iron what I've just done, and then we just push these through. Now, they don't look super neat at the moment, but I'm also not finished. So they're in, but as you can see, they kind of look more like welt pockets. So now I'm going to pull them out and I'm going to bend it over, and then I'm just going to try and get that right on the edge and crease it. Now if it still doesn't want to sit, which mine doesn't, we're going to take my handy dandy double-sided tape And we're going to put a line right next to the stitching, like this. And then peel off that backing. And then we're going to pull this back to the seam and stick it down. And then it has no choice but to obey me. And see that? One side is now perfectly beautiful. Double-sided tape is your friend. I go through so much double-sided tape. I buy 3 rolls at a time. So there's 50 meters to a full roll, and they usually don't even last me a month. But to be fair, I do make a lot of bags. I only use it when it's necessary. If I can get away without using it, I will. But moments like this where you're trying to fold back where there's foam and bulk, it's definitely worth using. And it's not that expensive. So see the difference? I'm holding up here. I'm not touching the back at all. One has tape and one does not. And that's why we're doing it. It's also quicker than clips. If you don't have tape, you could fold all of this over and put clips in, and then let it kind of train itself to be there. The problem with that is, though, we still need to put zipper tape in, so the clips would get in the way. One side, other side. Now, it has just occurred to me that I haven't cut a pocket for this. So I'm going to have to do that. So again, we're folding it back, we're pressing it down onto the double-sided tape. And voila! Zipper tape. I have not yet picked a colour. It's colourful, so I could kind of just go anywhere with it. The simplest solution is black with silver zipper, because that's fun. There's one. I always try and use all my little bits first. They just happen. Although that bit's probably a little bit too little. It is. I don't throw out anything under 5 inches because the smallest pattern or the smallest zipper I require for any pattern is the Pocket Pal by Lynn's Handmade. And that takes 5 inches of zipper tape. Alright, one. I'm just going to cut off a second one. So I just measure it the width of the pocket, and that's how much you need. The pattern obviously has measurements, and when I write a pattern, I put the measurements in. But when I'm, actually making stuff, I tend to just measure the pocket. So much easier. Okay, I need some zipper pulls. And I need to go into town to get some stuff. So I'll be back in ages, and we can then continue the bag. Okay, I am back. I also put my logo on the bottom like I normally do, because not so much I forgot, but I just didn't do it. So went to the shops, got all the stuff. So I have gone with plastic tubing for the inside of my handles. I got this from a hardware store. It is 3mm plastic tubing. So that will be inside my handles to give them like a nice firm, but as you can see, it is still nice and bendy. So they'll give like a nice shape. I also went and got my hardware in my Lord of the Rings bowl. Oh, and for those that want one, I've only got one left. So we're nearly out of Lord of the Rings bowls. Alright, so I'm just going to put my zippers on, and I'm just going to put them on a little way. So I only put them on about 1/3 of the way. And I'm using heart zippers to kind of soften the fact that everything else is messed up on the fabric. The Killer Clown's definitely my favourite part. Right. Now I assume we want them to close up. That would make sense. So I'm going to lay it so that the zip's going to close towards the top. Like so. Then I'm going to put that in there so it stays out of my way. We're going to slide under, and I'm going to start in front of the zipper pull. So the zipper pull's here, so I want to start here. You want to get the zip in the middle, and I'm going to do 1/8 of an inch from the edge of the fabric. Now, as you can see, I don't need to change to a zipper foot for this, which is awesome. And then we're going to stitch all the way around. Feels a bit weird because it's on an angle, but it's only because I've never done an angled one like this before. I'm going to put my needle down, lift up my presser foot, and zip this the rest of the way closed so that I can now easily get around the rest of it. Like so. See how that worked out nice and easy? I love easy. And then back stitch when we get back to the start. That is now one zipper in. This lifted while I was away because I was gone so long. If you wish to prevent that from your sticky tape, just put like a heavy book on it if you have other things to do. So again, I'm going to place it so that the zipper is going to close up like so. You also want to make sure that the zipper pull is kind of easy to get to. I'm going to line that up. And then again, I'm going to start just in front of the zipper. So it doesn't matter where you put it, so long as you can stitch at least a little bit in front of it. It helps. Ah. I'm just going to line that zipper up so it's in the center. So I'm just pushing on it slightly so it lines up in the middle like so. Stitch, back stitch. You can always change stitch color if you want something a little bit kind of crazier around your zipper pocket. Right, so I'm back to pretty much opposite where I started. So I'm going to zip that up, line up the bottom half, and then continue on. Needle down, pivot, across, pivot. The more you do your zippers this way, the quicker you become at it. I know it looks like I'm going really, really fast, but you do have to remember I've done at least 100 of these like this. So the more you do, the quicker you become. So don't be disheartened if you're looking at me thinking, oh my God, she goes so fast. It's all just practice, I promise. All right. So now, I need to pull these down and stitch them closed. Now, as you can see, just bear with me. So we're going to stitch all the way around the edge. And I'll show you why in a minute. It's going to be easier this way. All right, stitch all the way around. And again, we're going to do the same to the other one. Now, if you're using a metal zip, obviously don't stitch over the teeth of the zipper like I just did. You will snap a needle. I only use nylon zips, mainly just because I like to. I know some people prefer metal, some people prefer nylon. I only tend to use metal zips if I'm putting them in pants. Right. So, now that that's done, I'm going to come back and I'm going to just stitch down like this. Why, you may ask? Because that bit is no longer needed. And up this side. And that way, I'm not going to have weirdo baggy pockets. And then I can just trim that off. But trying to cut that shape to begin with, way harder than is necessary. See? Otherwise you would have had to cut like a weird shape like that. So now, my pockets are all set. They go all the way to the edge. And this will also now be caught in the seam allowance, which is fine. And voila. And then we're just going to zip those. So I'm going to zip them kind of in the middle. Mainly so that they're not anywhere. You don't want them all the way zipped up because, I'll show you why. If I left it like this, there's a good chance that you would clip that into a seam and snap a needle. So if you put them down in the middle, they can't get to any of the seams that we're going to be doing. So that's just a little bit of advice. All right, here is the piece that I have cut for my next zipper pocket, which had the accent piece. So I went and got some of this, and I just made it about the same width as my accent bit, and then just kind of made up. So I cut it 12 inches, because that's my favorite size pocket, apparently. I only just realized why I did that. And I'm gonna put this on the inside, because I like an inside zipper pocket. Right, so it makes sense to do that. So I'm going to flip this over and find the center. Centers are very, very important. I like things to be centered. So you line up the bottom, snip the center. We're going to need that later probably, so I'm just doing it now while it's easy. Then fold this in half. Line it up in the center, which I have got a crease. I don't know if you can see that, but you can in fact crease it quite firmly if you want to, so that I can see where the center is. So then when I fold this over, that's the center, like that. So that is where I'm going to want to put my zipper pocket. So I'm going to fold this in half. Like that, actually, and I'm going to use this as my guide so that the hole's the right size. So I'm just going to line that up on there. Alright, I'm going to draw that. Now, here's what I'm going to do a little bit differently. I'm going to do like one stitch wider than this particular thing because I don't want to be able to see it in the bag. So again, we're going to find the center. We're going to line that up on the center line. I decided I wanted it about there, so that's going to work out well. And it's long enough that there's still a gap at the bottom, as you can see. So, now that I've lined that up, we're going to take some clips and clip it together so that it won't slide around and move. Very important step. Now I can pop it under the machine. And like I said, I'm going to start one stitch back from the lines that I drew. So I want this to be bigger than the hole. So we're going to get to there, do one stitch, and then back stitch, flip, line it up with these ones. I promise this method to my madness. Right, so that's with the ends. We're going to do one extra stitch and then back stitch. Trim off all the tails and this little jump stitch. You can take your clips off now. Grab some scissors. Let's try that again, where I don't fall down and you're looking at the floor. Okay. So I'm going to make a little snip. And then I'm going to do the same thing I did to the front ones. And then triangle out those ends. And again, you want to leave a pretty decent triangle. Like that. And then again, we're going to flip it over and I'm going to push up. And then I'm going to push down and finger press that. Stuff it through. Like so. And again. Like that. Then, more double-sided tape. Again, this is why I buy so much of it. Like this, peel your backings off. Now because this is a really wide set accent panel, I can use the 1/2 inch or 12 mil. Then when I line this up, what should happen is, because we did that one extra stitch, the sides shouldn't stick out. And I say shouldn't because obviously there is a small chance. But See how it's not kind of intruding on the sides? That's exactly what we wanted. So now that that's down, I'm going to push this down and I'm going to start at the top. I'm going to go to a size 4 stitch length. And we're going to top stitch all the way around the accent panel, making sure that we don't catch any of this. So now that I'm getting closer to this end, I'll just show you, I'm going to push that down so that we don't catch that either. As you can tell as well, I've taken off my shoes this time. Then I'm going to pull both of these up out of the way. And then I'm going to take my thumb and push that side bit so it's down out of the way. We just don't want to stitch any of it yet. Just constantly push it around out of your way. So the idea is that none of that has been caught in that accent panel. Now, because this is quite a big panel, that was very easy. Mine are a little bit trickier because I have small accent panels. But with a little bit of practice, you'll be fine. Right, so now, more zipper tape. So again, we want it the width of the pocket. Chop. And we want our other zipper pull. And I'm going to just singe the ends of this with a lighter. You always need a lighter. Right. Wiggle. Pull the zip on just a little bit. And then same installation as earlier, we're just going to lay it over the top. Put my scissors away because they're annoying me. Line this up. And then top stitch around. Needle down, across the end, pivot back. Needle down, grab that zipper, out of the way, and then when we get back to the start, we're going to back stitch just a couple. Back stitching does not need to be like a full inch, it only needs to be 2 or 3 stitches. Try not to get carried away. I know it's easy to do. I know I even do it sometimes because I get carried away, but try not to. All right, so now if you hold the top, this should fall perfectly down. So you line it up, pull this over, and then we're going to stitch just the sides of this pocket. So we're going to go back to a joining stitch length. I'm going to just stitch the sides, not the bottom, because this will be where I turn the bag. Well, probably not all the bag, but at least part of the bag through. This will be like my last seam. Later. Way later. So I've started to get all the bits done now. So I'm going to grab my other part of my lining and we're going to line up the base. But here's the thing. We are going to only stitch the edge bits, and we're going to leave the whole middle open because I'm actually going to turn the bag through here. So you need to do a couple of inches on each end. At least 2 would be nice. I'm going to probably do a few more. Not that much. I'll measure it for you. What is it? Oh, no, I did 2. There you go. I did 2 inches without even measuring it. You can eyeball it. It doesn't have to be exact. So I'm going to start from the edge, work my way in, stitch, back stitch. Just a bit. You just want a bit done. The bigger the gap, the easier the bag is to turn through later. And because I've got a lot of like vinyl on vinyl bits, I feel it's going to be easier. So I now need my side panels of my lining. I'm going to put these in. So first thing I want to do, fold them in half and find the center of the bottom. Shocker, I know. It's kind of how I do all bags. You will notice that I pretty much make all bags the same way. They're all just different shapes. And one day, you'll make X amount of bags, and one day it will all just click in your brain. You'll be like, oh, I get it. Took me a while when I first started bags. I was like, this is way hard. But one day it will just click for you. So, I'm going to line up that middle with the middle of the base. I grab some clips. I'm going to make them face inwards. I am also going to take this seam and I'm going to make it face towards the center bottom. So it'll be clipped to the base and not to the sides. So now I've got 3 there. I'm going to come up and I'm going to match up this edge because they have to match. It's important that they match. So we're going to make them. And we're going to put 2 clips there. And then I'm going to grab this side and do the same thing. So that all our key points are now matched up. And the rest of this, if you pull, should just fit in. You're just going to have to smush it into the corners, such as life. Right, so we're getting down to here, and I'm just going to work that corner in. Like that. See, it does fit, even though it didn't look like it was going to, and even I was a little bit skeptical. I'm like, maybe I did the wrong seam allowance. Seam allowances are important when bags are built like this. Otherwise, this would be too long. So, we're just going to smush in that corner to make it fit. Like so. Ta-da! It does fit. Even though sometimes they don't look like they will. So now I'm going to stitch, back stitch. I'm going to clean up my clips as I go because I like a nice clean work space, as such as it is. Then I'm going to check my corners, and it's fabulous. I know you can't really see in the video, but it is, I promise. Next side. So we're going to build the whole lining, and then we'll go and do the final construction on the outside. I know I've jumped back and forth a bit, but that was to eliminate pattern pieces. Sometimes I'll do all the lining and then all the outside. And sometimes I just don't want to. Depends on who's got more pieces, really. Alright, and then squish in that corner. Don't be surprised, it does fit, even though it doesn't look like it, right? So it looks there, see how it's just kind of sticking up? If I grab it and then push it so it's a 3D shape, right? So I'm holding it so it's now got the curve. See how it fits now? That is how you squish it in. You hold it in the 3D object it is, and it all just works out. I do use a lot of clips though, so it stays in place. Very important. Clips are your friend. You can buy them like 100 at a time. I buy a lot. I do find that I break a lot. They get to a certain point and they just can't handle how rough I am with them. And they break. Also, my child steals them a lot. He thinks they're wonderful. Which I suppose they are. Alright, and then we're going to squish that corner so it goes around the bend. like that. And let's do the next side. So again, I'm going to come in, I'm going to stitch and back stitch. Alright, bring it up, hold it up. It's a 3D object, you need to hold it as such. Especially trying to do those curves. Or they will be the death of you. Just keep kind of flicking this bit around so it's not in your way. And back stitch. And then we're just going to check that corner as well, and I'm happy. Sometimes I get like little folds and you can fix them, and when I do them I do show you, but we don't have any today, so I can't show you how to fix what isn't there. Lovely. So that's the inside of your bag done. Let's go back to our outside. Oops. So we are going to need our side pieces, obviously. Our base. So now that I've got my logo on there, we also need to add our bag feet. So as always, I have bag feet. I like bag feet. What am I looking for? Ruler. Everything's moved around and I'm still not quite 100% used to where everything now lives. So give me a minute. Alright. Bag feet. There. 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 So I'm just measuring them. I'm sure the pattern tells you where to do. Otherwise, I'm pretty much doing what I always do. I always do 1.5 inches in from the longer edges. And then the side ones, I just kind of play it by sight. So this time I did 3 inches. Normally I do about 2 inches, but this is quite a long bag. So it's relevant to what you want them to look like. I don't do the 5 because my logo's in the center. So that wouldn't work out. And then I'd have to put the logo off center and then it would look weird. I don't want to do that, so I don't. Right, so that's a hole punch for all of those. Then I'm going to take the feet and push them through. So I always push the post up from the bottom. Then I'm going to flip it over and just click these on top. And did you hear that? Sometimes they click louder than others. It's also occurred to me I forgot to grab the magnets. That's alright. That's not the right die set. Made myself this and like a couple of other bodysuits. So I've got the plastic cam snap die in instead of the one I need. Oh no, that's different again. Wait, which one's that one? This is what I need. That one. There we go. I should really label these because I have so many, but eventually I remember what they all are. I keep them in a cute little box so that they're all together. It helps. It really does. And luckily for me, I've got a spare spot. So as I take one thing out, I've got a home to put the other one. So I am just using my normal rivet foot. So this is just to do double capped rivets. But because it's got the rubber bit, you can actually put your bag feet in. And it works out without damaging your feet. And I like that. I'm not actually even sure if you can get a special die for these, but doing it that way seems to work for me. Is that going to come off? No. Just feels a bit loose. So I'm going to just squish it. Once more. A little bit harder, because I'm really paranoid. I don't want them to come off. Wow. So, now I'm going to take one of my main panels and this piece And we're going to construct it pretty much the same way we did the other one. So I'm going to take my back piece first and put the base on. Back stitch at the start. I've got the foam facing down because it needs the grip of the, what's it called? The feed dogs to pull it through with the foam. Right. Then I'm going to fold this down and I'm going to top stitch along the base. And I'm going to go up to a size 4 stitch length. And I'll be doing this on both sides. Now I did it at 1/8 of an inch, but if you're new to sewing, you can do 1/4 of an inch. That will still work. Right, so it's like a nice little thing. Back joining. Now this is where I need the pattern because I need to know exactly where to line up the handly parts. So I imagine it's about halfway through. Oh, and I did the exterior slip pocket on the inside. Not that it matters. Okay, here it is. Install the flaps and back panels. So, I'm going to find the center, because again, center's always easiest. Make a little clip so that I can see it, right? You can mark it with a pen, but that's always easier to see, and it's in the seam allowance, so it won't matter. Right, ruler, check. This doodad, check. Measure that down from there. So there's my line. Also take the middle flap. So we need the middle flap, which is the little pointy one, which is under here somewhere. Here we go. Right, so we want this one. This is the one we're working with. So this is going to go here. So we're going to have it lying up this way in the center. So again, actually, you know what? It's going to be easier to do a little center line as well. Always is. And because it's chalk, it will just come off. So, show you what that looks like. So we've got a nice long line, and then there's like a little vertical one right here. So that we can line up the center with the center like this. And then it wants us to, back up on our 4 stitch length, it wants us to stitch probably, I'm going to go with 4 stitches along the sides. So I'm going to go back and forth 1. And then I'm going to go across here. Now, if you've done a fabric flap, you sew it down on and then up and then sew over it. So you would flip it this way, stitch, trim off the excess fabric and then fold it back and top stitch over it. And then that would hide your raw edge of your fabric. Now I didn't do it with the vinyl because it's too thick, and you also don't need to. And that didn't work because I ran out of bobbin thread. Of course I did. Alright, another bobbin thread and then we'll be back. Right, and trim that tail off. And then we're going to come back here and I have to sew some more because the first lot didn't work. Move Scully so I don't drop all the clips. So I'm just going to come back to here. I'm going to stitch and I'm going to back stitch, and that locks both the old stitches and the new stitches into place. I'm going to trim that tail so it doesn't get in my way. And then we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then back like that. And that has now secured it. So from the side, the front, it looks glorious, but from the back you can see where you've actually stitched. Right. So that's our first one on. The next one, take the main flap, which is this bad boy. Now I'll be using rivet magnets. I forgot to mention that. I'll probably do that at the start of the video. I'm using rivet magnets. Otherwise you should have put them in already. But I forgot to tell you that, so whoops. And then this should just line up along here. Like that. You need to make sure that they are ½ inch away from the edge. The reason being, if you do not, it will get sewn into the side seam, which we do not want. So I'm just going to take a ruler and I'm going to mark ½ inch from each edge, because this will be the easiest way to avoid such a problem, right? Inside those lines. And it's at the same length as the other ones. So realistically, I could have drawn this line the whole way across. Like that. And like that. So everything's lining up beautifully. And again, this just dusts off. You could also use an erasable pen. And then this lines up right there. So I'm just going to sew one at a time. So I'm going to take this one. Line it up, stitch it down, yeah, see, something sounds wrong. I can tell. My bobbin's playing up, which means I made it too full when I wound it. These things do happen to me a lot. There's not even an end. Come on. Sometimes if it doesn't want to come out, I take these and kind of just force it out. Oh, it's got a whole knot going on. Good job. I don't need that much of a tail, so I can chop the end bit off. This is why I only usually do 3/4 full. I tried to do a little bit more today, and look how that worked out for me. Not so great. So I'm going to stitch the bottom edge first. And then back stitch. You might also want to go up the 4 stitches we did earlier. We could do that. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then back stitch. But the problem with that is now I have to come to the other side and do it over here. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then back stitch. Doesn't matter if you don't do it all in one go. You won't be able to tell. It just makes it that little bit more secure. So let's go do the other side. So again, we're lining it up right on that edge. We're going to start here, 1, and then back, and then down, pivot, across the bottom. This is why these are fabric. So again, if you did this in not fabric, in fabric, sorry, and not vinyl, you'd fold them the other way, you'd stitch this line, and then you'd fold them up and then top stitch it down. I do it in other bags that I've made. I'm just trying to think which ones that would have a video of it. I'm not sure off the top of my head, if I'm honest. Right. Flaps are on. So this is the back piece, the flaps are on. So now is probably the time we need to install our magnets. And they have all of the magnets markings in here, which are obviously important because off the top of my head I have no idea where. Okay. So I'm just going to go through the pattern real quick. I'm close to it. Right, here. So I need 1 in that, obviously. I knew that. And I'll need 2 in that. So I'm going to need to go grab 3. Or I can have a twist lock. Ooh. Alright. I just need the markings for the front one where I put my magnetic snap. So, it'll be here somewhere. I did my pockets. I did them slightly different. Here it is. Oh, it's marked on the pattern piece. Well, that works out easier. Let me just grab the pattern piece. Here we go. So, again, with an erasable marker, so we need this one here, and we need the top and the bottom one, and there's a magnetic snap for that inner. So the inner pocket that I did is actually meant to be an outer pocket. You could do both. You could put it in or out. It doesn't actually matter, turns out. Okay, so I'm going to punch these holes. I'm just trying to decide, do I want to do... No, I'm going to do magnets for both. I was going to do a twist lock, but I'm really feeling a magnet. And then on the flap, we need one in the center, like right there. And that one right in the center. To make sure I get it right in the center, I'm just going to crease it a little bit, like this, and then right. Where's the front page? Yep, nice and low, right where I've got it. Right there. So now I've got my holes. I need to grab some magnets and then we will install them. So I'm going to do rivet magnets because I'm just obsessed, and that's fine. Nothing wrong with a good little obsession. So I do have these on my website. I discovered them and then I had to try them and then I loved them, so I got them for the website. And I also sell the dies that install them for these style cam presses. I know there's another style. Unfortunately, I don't stock them because there's got to be a limit somewhere, basically. I have to stop in, like, trying to stock everything in the universe. I am only one person in a tiny little room. So we're going to go with the innie one is for the males first. We're going to do the males. So they're just a rivet. So you separate these, and then we're going to put this in this way because that's the top, and then the rivet goes up in here, like that. So we just put this, so because it's got a dent, so it'll hold it perfectly in place, and then you just come down and squish, and it's installed. It doesn't hurt your hands. So one. The other way you can do it is you can put it on here and clip it down like that, and then install it in and squish it. It does the same thing. Your choice. So now I'm just going to take the bottom out and put the other bottom in, because this one raises up to hold the big part. So again, I'm going to put one magnet in there. I'm going to put the top on here, click it down, put it in. It's a magnet, so it actually clips itself in place. Now here's where you got to be careful. Pull it sideways to take it off. If you lift it up, because it's magnetized, it will pull this whole thing out with it. Played that game one too many times. So again, we're going to put this in. I'm going to clip it on. Turn the bag the other way so it fits. See how it just kind of, you maneuver it around and it just clicks into place. And then again, squish it down. And that time, see how I lifted straight up? It brought that bit with it because they're strong magnets. And voila, we are done. So then I put them away again. Always try and keep stuff in order. I know it seems like it's taking longer now, but it's much easier to do it as you go, because I know I'm going to need this again soon for the handles. So it's just easier to do it as you go, like that. See, so now I've got magnet, magnet, zipper, zipper. The last thing we need to do before we go joining everything together is the strap connector, which is this little line on the pattern piece. And these little rectangles. So, double-sided tape again. And again and again and again. So I'm just making like a train of these. It's not the words I wanted to use. Makes me think of a movie. Not a pleasant one either. It's a horror movie. I love a good horror. Anyway, so I've got them all as one big long strip. Now I can just come along and snip in between to separate them like that. And we're going to pull off that edge. And then I'm going to fold both sides into the center. This is going to eliminate raw edges, which is awesome. Like that. Now, because this is really stiff glitter vinyl, I'm going to just stitch them now. So you can either stitch the outside edge or the inner side. It doesn't really matter. You can do either. And I'm doing them 2 at a time so that I can chain stitch them. Because I love chain stitching. Saves time, saves thread, which saves money. Alright, so that's those done. Now I'll do the next 2. Push down. Now I know that their pockets are smaller than mine, but I feel like that's okay. So their pockets you'd only fit like a lip gloss or your keys or something smaller. I did mine deliberately bigger, and I know they ended up a weird shape, but they will also hold more. So don't be afraid to change little things like that on patterns. It can't hurt, honestly. Right. The next pattern I plan on doing today, I'm going to do a hack on my own pattern. Just because it doesn't hurt to change things up. Alright. Now I've got all of these. And you know what else I forgot? The squares. I am just very forgetful today. It's not my day. Alright. But what we are going to do is we're going to lay this here. And I want to fold this at that line where it says invisible connector here. So it says it on the pattern. I'm going to line this up along the bottom edge because that makes sense. And then draw the line. And where it stops. And then I'm going to flip it over the other way. Now we need to do this 4 times. So I'm making like an L shape so that I can see where the outer edge goes. And again, we're going to do it on this one. So I can still, even though I've got the base on, I can still see that and line it up with the bottom edge. And that comes like right in there. Bottom edge. Right, done. Craft knife, again, love a good craft knife. And then I'm just going to slice and dice from that outer L across and inwards so that I can see what's going on. Right, so from the outer edge, inwards. Outer edge, inwards. Now we're slicing in the thickness of these. I can eyeball that. And then I'm going to get me some Frey stopper glue. This one is from Spotlight. But not all spotlights stock it, because, you know, that'd be too easy. Now, it's very runny like water. So you can see I'm pouring it very slowly, and it still came out too fast. And I'm just smoothing it across the whole hole I just cut. Just want to put a little bit. So again, patience so that you don't get too much. Like that. And then put the lid back on so it doesn't dry out. Okay, I need my little connector bits because I forgot them. Hold that thought. Chunky rectangle rings. I don't do the thin ones anymore because personally I just don't think they look as good. And neither did you guys because they weren't very popular. So why stock things that we don't want? So now I'm going to push this into the hole. Now I didn't quite make it big enough. Shocker. But there's also enough stuff here that won't matter. So I'm going to just stuff it in the hole a little bit. Not gonna lie, got the fray stopper glue everywhere, so it doesn't matter that I'm cutting a little bit more. It's also covered in the stuff. But it'll dry clear, so it's not a big deal. So I'm just gonna poke them out about that much. And then we're gonna push them down and we're gonna stitch them. So we're gonna stitch on the glitter vinyl. So I'm going up about 1/4 inch. Oops, I was, till it unthreaded. So about 1/4 inch, and what this is going to do is this is going to seal the top of it so we won't see where the connector come in. Now this is going to be a little bit more involved because it's a fabric outer than a vinyl outer, but just bear with me because it is going to work. I'm going to make it. Right, so we're going to do that, and then I'm going to pull that so that I have a tail for the next one. And I'm going to leave the bottom one attached because it's just easier. And I'm going to push it across and flip that up. And then I'm going to top stitch along there. Like that. Now I can trim that bottom one off. And that tail. So we don't want any of that. And then I can flip it over and cut that. It was just easier to leave it there. So I did. So, thread on one of your rectangle rings, and then I'm going to push it down through the gap. Now, the reason I'm holding it up like this is because I also want it to push the fabric in. So by doing it this way, it's pushing that fabric so that the fabric's going to face out the back here. I'm going to pull that down nice and tight. And now that my fabric's pushed in, I'm going to hold it there with my finger and I'm going to top stitch it so that the raw edge of the fabric is also tucked away, right? Like that. And so now I do not have a raw edge showing. I'll show you. Oops. Of course I threw it on the floor. See, it's not a Tory video without something on the floor. Every time. It's like my magic trick. Or anti-magic trick, really. Right, so put this one on. We're going to do the same thing. So I'm going to hold it up because I want the fabric to be pushed to the inside. That is the name of this game. And I don't know why, but it works better if you hold it up. You just have to trust me on that, although I suppose you could try if you want to. But I don't make us do weird stuff for no reason, I promise. Right, so now that that's in, I'm going to hold my finger on it so it doesn't have a chance to flick out, and then I'm just going to stitch straight over like that, and invisible connectors achieved. Ta-da! Right, next one. Same exact process all over again, including the fact that I didn't quite make the holes big enough. It's only by a tiny bit, but it will help to get it in. You also want it to be quite firm. You don't want to go wider than these because it will leave a raw edge of fabric, which we don't want. So the fact that I've made them slightly smaller is actually good. So it means that it's all going to work out. So again, we're going to come and we're going to stitch above the line onto the connector like that. Then we can shove our other side in. I say shove because we literally are shoving it in. This needs to be a tiny smidgy bit bigger. And I'm talking like 1 or 2 millimeters, like the tiniest amount. You also, I forgot to mention, you want to make sure that the join side is currently facing up so that it will be hidden later on. So in and stitch. That time I didn't even undo it. It'll be fine. And then you can just trim off the tails and jump stitches and everything else you've got going on. Like that. And then again with the strap on, lift it up to push the fabric through to the back. And you can see that I've left it, the hole is very, very tight. Super deliberate. We want it that way so that when I pull it down like this, it'll hold the fabric under while I top stitch it down. Now I'm trying to top stitch as close to the fabric edge as I can, so it doesn't like poke out and we don't miss stitching it down. See, I only put one on that time. I didn't throw the second ring. Look at me go. Usually it's wonder clips I drop. So again, pushing it through, and you really got to force it in because you want to have the whole like snug. Snug's a good word for it. And as you pull this, so I'm pulling on that out, it's helping to pull the fabric with it. So then again, hold it down with your finger, stitch, stitch, back stitch, stitch across, and back stitch some more. All right, everything's going according to plan. So that's all the bits. Now we just need final construction and handles. So I'm going to take the base and my front piece. I'm going to use some clips because there's layers and stuff. And I'm going to have it with the base facing up. Again, because I want the feed dogs to move my foam on the bottom. I don't think I've ever explained why I do that. I think I just do it, whether you follow along or not. But there is reasons why I do things, I promise. Even if they sometimes do look really awkward. So, back to a joining stitch length of 2.5, and I'm going to stitch and I'm going to back stitch. I'm going to fold this over so that it doesn't hit my thing there. Now this will also be getting part of those giant pockets I did on the front. I regret nothing. And back stitch at the end. Grab those tails, trim them off. You should always try and trim your tails as you go. It just makes things easier. So again, we're going to fold this to the base and then we're going to top stitch it down. Doing this right here will also help with the side construction and the bulk that you may or may not have. So don't skip this step. It makes the bag sit nicer. You don't need to trust me on that one. You can make one with this and then one without and see which one sits better. Because I know which one it's going to be. It's going to be this one. Or I wouldn't bother doing it. But it is actually good to experiment. Don't just take my word as gospel. Try it for yourself. Like if you've never done this where you sew the base down, try it on your next bag. See how we go. All right. Awesome. We're looking good. I don't need the instructions. Realistically, I did not need to print all of that. I could have just printed out the measurements, like those pages, but that's fine. Now, I didn't put foam on these because they need to squish in. Like, the picture shows that the sides kind of squish in. So I deliberately did not put foam so that they are easier to be squishy. So again, we're going to find the center of the bottom. But I did put my hefty interfacing. So they are still firm-ish, just not bag foam firm. If you wanted something in between this and that, you could put fusible fleece on these ones so that they're still bendy but have some stuff going on. That would also be an option. So I'm going to put more clips here. I am now going to fight the bag. The bag has foam, so it's thicker and more resilient or reluctant to do what I want than the lining. Linings just do what they're told. They're quite pleasant. So if you're ever worried about building a bag, always try and do the lining first to get a feel for it, because this one will always be trickier. Always, without fail. So I'm just working down again towards that corner. And we want to make it, I'm going to take that one clip off that's part of my corner. And I'm just going to maneuver it in. And that one there. Then we're going to do the other side. So again, line up the edge. If you were to start at the center and work your way out, you would find that these ends won't line up the way they're supposed to, which is why I'm not doing it. I'm explaining a lot about why I'm not doing stuff today. Sorry about that. I guess I'm just trying to be extra thorough. That and I was naughty and I've had a Red Bull, so I'm like hyper focused on everything. So again, we're just kind of, you're almost stuffing it in to the corners. Boom! Move that back to adjoining stitch length. Yes, I go up and down with my stitch lengths a lot. You just need to bear with me on that. So, if all goes well, you should not get this piece because we measured the 1/2 inch with our measuring tape. And then I did like a mil closer so that I wasn't going to clip it. If you are worried though, you can use your like fingers and feel around in there. I haven't got it. I didn't think that I would. But just make sure that you definitely have it out of the seam allowance. So then I'm going to bring this up and around because again, 3D object. And I'm going to get the clips out of my way. Like so. And we're going to just keep going around, and then down. And back stitch at the top. Ta-da! One side. One more to go. This looks so cool. I really like this fabric. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, but I like that it's kind of got busy, crazy stuff going on. And it's still a horror fabric. Like it says, be afraid, be very afraid. It's the weird things in life that amuse me, alright? And it has a killer clown. Classic horror with a killer clown. Alright. See this? I got some tails I missed. Get them off now, otherwise they're likely to poke through your bag and then you have to try and deal with it pulling them through the seam enough to get them to not be seen in the seam, if that makes any sense at all. So always just get them out of your way before you put the bag together. You will find it much easier, I promise. Alright, get this corner in. Might do one more clip there. Then, so again, we're going to just push it till it's got its everything in. I'm all about the horror today. Do you know I didn't consciously wear this to make this bag? It wasn't a deliberate thing. It's just kind of happened. because I made this top yesterday on my Sunday. Because weekend I try and do more personal sewing if I'm going to sew. So I actually fixed some stuff for hubby, made 3 of these in different fabrics, and a dress. It sounds like a lot, but don't think that I'm that crazy. I did have all of it already cut out, and 2 of these were already like partially done. So it sounds like I got a lot done, but it's more like I finished off a bunch of stuff. This one I made start to finish. The other 2 had like half of it done. But it was nice to finish them all off. I've now got different outfits to wear a week that you guys haven't seen yet. And it's not for your benefit, it's purely for mine, but I like to wear clothes that I've made. I like having a custom wardrobe. It's very rare that you'll find people with the same clothes as me. Like, you might have some of this in your stash, and by all means go ahead and make one. We will be unique together. Alright, so again, lifting it up, 3D object, round we go. Always move it with you. If you are going to put foam on the side, I do suggest you don't put it in the seam. It would be a very difficult seam to sew if you had foam in it as well. And backstitch. Trim those tails. Check on the inside to make sure that your edges are all lovely. I didn't check the other side. I should do that too. They are. We did good. Okay. Tuck these in like that. Trim off any tails you can see. And then we're going to take our scissors that cut bulk. So for me, it's my Class A knife edge. No, nobody pays me to say that. I just thought you should know. And I'm just going to trim off the excess here and at these corners. Now, the reason I'm doing this is because I want my lining to fit in nice and snug. Actually, I'm going to cut it all off, stuff it. But especially these corners. If you cut nothing else, make sure you cut here. If you're on a domestic machine, you want as little bulk here as possible because we still have to turn it through, and I'm going to top stitch it. I don't know if the pattern says that or not, but we're going to do it. I'm actually going to cut all of this off. The less seam that's there, the easier it will be for the lining to just kind of snuggle in. And we want that because I'm going to take my mini iron off camera at the end and iron my lining to the double-sided foam on the front and the back to help it be less wrinkly, I think is the word I'm after. Right, so we're just going to cut off all of that. It's not a waste. It'd be harder to try and sew the bag together with an 1/8 of an inch seam. Trust me on that. Right, exterior. Flip it out the right way. Now again, this was potentially supposed to be on the outside, but I'm quite happy with it on the inside. I like inside organisation. While I don't have to, I'm going to turn that all the way out and get the edges out, and this will be where our bags turn through. I want my zipper pocket on the back side of the bag. So that's the way I'm going to put it in. We're just going to shove it. We don't have to be neat or gentle. If it can't handle this, it won't handle being a bag, like a handbag for you or whoever you're giving it or selling it to. So be rough with it now. If it can't handle the rough now, it won't handle real life. Don't worry about wrinkling it. We'll deal with that later when we iron it. And that's why I have a mini iron. I actually have a lot of mini irons. Alright, so I always start with the corners. And then I've done the short edge. Then I'm going to come across to the other side. And again, I'm going to do the corners. Now, this is a bit tricky because you've also got to push down that handle that doesn't want to be in that position. So it's being minorly difficult. It's not too bad. It's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. But just make sure you've shoved it down out of the way. So now that my 2 short ends are done, I'm going to come along and do the long edges. Now, I always do short edges first. I've always just found it easier. And then we also need to make sure that we're lining up with the edge of the fabric and not just the edge of the foam. If you didn't iron it down well enough, which apparently right here I didn't, the foam in the bag will not match. Like they should, at least. Lots of clips too, because again, I'm fighting against those 3 handle parts. This side should go very, very smoothly compared to the other one. Always do your tricky side first, because you'll feel more relieved that this side was quick and then you finished. If you leave the hardest part till last, it feels like the bag drags on forever. Just random tip. There's some bags that there's just like certain bits, they're not hard, but they just annoy me to make. So I always try and do them first, because then I know the rest of the bag is cruisy. Alright, we're going to come and shove this under. Needle down, stitch, back stitch. Now, I'm going to pull this top back and down and squish it with my whole arm. I'm not just using my hand, it's going to hurt my wrists and my fingers. I'm going to like basically slump on the bag with my whole arm. That's going to help hold it down. It's going to help us get around. So I'm still using this part of my hand. Or arm, sorry, not hand, not my hand. You always want to stop with your needle down before you rearrange the bag. So I'm going to bring this up, because again, 3D object. While it's technically a rectangle, we are basically sewing a circle where we have to go around everything. So you just want to make sure that it's going around. So the second half's always easier because the clips aren't in the way. So I don't know if you noticed, but I don't really have to squish it as much now that the clips are gone. Because the clips stick out, that's what gets them in the way of the other half. Now right here, I nearly had a problem. My presser foot went under part of my side seam allowance, and we don't want that. And so now we're back to the start and we're going to backstitch. Look from the outside and make sure that you're happy. Now before we turn it, more scissors. Again, this is mainly designed for domestic sewers, but every side seam part, we're just going to cut out like a little V. We're going to take the bulk out of all of those because I still want to top stitch. By taking the bulk out, you're going to find it easier to top stitch the bag. Now, I wouldn't really have a problem on this machine, but if you're on a domestic, this is a very important step, one that people don't necessarily think of. And my husband just got home, so I'm going to have to stop the video again until he goes back from lunch, and then, actually, let's just turn it through now, and then I'll stop for the top stitching. So I'm going to grab here and just pull it through the lining. Alright, I'm going to hit pause and we'll come back once hubby has gone back to work from lunch. Sorry. He has gone back to work. So, let us continue. So I've turned the bag out. Then I'm going to open my zipper here. And I'm going to pull through the hole in the lining through the zipper slot. Now, obviously, because I left a big hole, it was nice and easy to turn. But now I have to stitch up that hole. And the bigger the hole, sometimes the trickier it is to put back together. Push them out the way. Now, if you're new to sewing, you might want to come along and grab a bunch of clips and clip it all together. I've had enough practice now that I don't really need to. I do need to turn my machine on though, or we're not going to really get anywhere. We're going to stitch, we're going to back stitch. So you just kind of have to move along in sections. So I'm just working it out. You can't just pull it all out as a big straight line because it's still attached to the bag. So it doesn't work like that. You kind of have to do it in sections. And then when we get to the end, we backstitch and trim off the tails. And then I'm just going to push the lining back in like that. So now with my zipper pocket, you want to pull the whole zipper pocket out like this. Then I'm going, so I always pull it taut. Then I'm going to tuck the the raw edges in and pull it tight again, and then I'm going to use my thumb and my middle finger to kind of pinch it. And then I can pop it straight under and stitch it. Oh, that rhymes. Again, you can put clips on here if you're new. There is no shame in clips. Don't think that you don't have to not use them just because I am. This is just a practice thing. I probably clipped the first 50 bags I made, and then eventually you get used to it. So you don't need to anymore. And you'll just feel when the time's right. So don't stress about that too much. So now we've just got our top stitching to do. Two ways you can do this. If you've got a cylinder arm machine, you can just zip around and do it. Or you can turn the bag inside out so you can stitch from the top. I'm not super worried though, so I'm actually going to stitch it from this way. So I'm going to start at the side. And I'm going to take a whole bunch of clips and I'm going to clip it so that the seam is even and the clips are facing the lining. So normally I'd like to sew it lining side up, but today we're going to do it lining side down, just to prove that you can. I like to do different stuff in videos, because then you'll pick out which way you like better. So I'm just working my way around. You want to make sure that seam is right on the edge. This part here will be the trickiest because of all the handles that are in the way, but we'll deal. I'm not super worried. As you can tell, I assume you can tell. Alright, so that is now the lining clipped in place. So I'm going to do the easy side first. I don't know, that sounds like cheating, but whatever. So I'm on a 4 stitch length. I'm going to come over to kind of the back side part, and we're going to stitch and we're going to back stitch. We're always going to stop with our needle down to reposition the bag. And I'm stitching with a 1/8 seam allowance, but if you're new to bag making, you might want to do the full 1/4 inch. Choice is yours, no judgment from me. The reason we're doing the easy side first is because once we get to this side, I won't have to also deal with all of the clips, so it will make doing the tricky side a little bit easier. There is always method to my madness. Because if you had started on this tricky side, you would have also had all of these clips in your way, which would have made it like next level tricky. Whereas now, I can just not have to worry about this edge at all because it's already done. And then when we get back to the start, we're going to back stitch again. Trim off the tails. And the bag part is done. All that's left now is our handles. So these kind of pinch in at the side. This comes over and attaches like that, maybe. Maybe not. Why are you misbehaving? Ah, beautiful, right? So there's our handles. I don't know why I just had so much trouble with that, hey. Now for the handle parts. So I want a piece that's going to go from there to there. So you want it to just go over that edge. And then we're going to cut it. And I'm going to use my paper cutting scissors for obvious reasons. The guy at the shop uses a Stanley knife, but it's all much of a muchness. Right, line it up. Same size, chop. Clearly I bought too much. I bought a meter. So I was like, well, we'll see. So now I'm going to line this, actually. I'm going to line this up the easy way. I'm going to take some double-sided tape because everything is sticky. We're going to put that down the center. And then I can stick my pipe tubing stuff to it. So this is 3mm fishing. It's for like a fish tank, apparently. Not that that really matters, but if you don't have a hardware store near you, maybe you've got an aquarium place. So, now, straightening it out as much as I possibly can, I'm just going to stick it to the double-sided tape. And ta-da! Nothing moves. Tape really is your best friend. And I'm not brand specific. I know a lot of people ask me what brand I use. I use whatever I can find. I have personally never found one brand better than the other. Now these are going to make my handle smaller because I only got a thin one. But I'm not really worried about that either. So now I'm just going to clip it all together. So I could have got thicker tubing. I could have gone with 10mm or even thicker. But this also gives you an option to make the handle smaller. So we're going to do that in a second. Whoops. Oh, look, I dropped something. Shocker. So I actually could have gone with like quite a thick piping. It just would have created quite a thick handle. And I'm not sure that I wanted that. But of course you could. There's nothing wrong with it. You're just pinching it together at the raw edge like so. Then I'm going to want to change the foot out to a, no, not that one. That was my needle. Think, woman. This one. And yes, I am using a bobbin. And yes, I am aware that some people don't agree because it could damage my bobbin. And that's fine. You can use a screwdriver. I never seem to have one handy though. Alright, so we want a zipper foot. I have a lot of feet in here. I almost need a box for all my feet. It gets a bit crazy. The reason I have so many feet is because when I first got the machine, I was testing all the different ones out to see which one would be better for vinyl. So like this one's got rollers on the bottom because it was supposed to help go over vinyl. I didn't like it as much as you'd think though, so we don't use that one. Instead, what I bought is a metal zipper foot, and then I've put Teflon tape on the bottom to make it glide around my vinyl. And that's what worked for me. Now, that might not work for you, and that's okay. Different people like different stuff. So, I'm going to start here, and I'm going to V in, and then I'm going to try and get as close as I can to my piping. Or tubing. It's tubing. And none of that is stitching. And when I say none, I literally mean none. Like I could just pull that whole thing out. It's not ideal. Of course it's going to misbehave. If this doesn't work on this machine, it's because of the glitter vinyl. So please don't think it's, no, it's not happening. Again, I got like 4 stitches in. So I will try it with my normal foot, and then if that doesn't work, I'm gonna have to go to my cylinder arm, and it's the type of vinyl. It's like a weird vinyl. This is actually the last of it. It's glitter vinyl, but it's really weird and stiff. It's not like the stuff I used to stock and will be stocking again soon. It's different and clearly not as conducive to what I need it to do. So we'll try one more time with this. Oh, also, if you can hear the banging, there's bombs happening. So just ignore it. Of course you don't want to stitch. It's just my day. Now, right, so it's my vinyl. So I have two options here. I can go to the other machine and stitch them, or I can change the type of handles I do. But I was really looking forward to these ones. Or you could hand stitch it, but I'm not doing that. I don't understand why it's not stitching. Let's come down to this edge. See, it's not even stitching there. And that's weird, because it stitched the whole rest of the bag. This vinyl is not my friend, but this is the last of it, and I do want to have these handles. So I am going to hit pause and do this on the other machine, and then I'll come back and show you how to trim them. Purely the vinyl though, so it's because I can't even stitch it here where it's 2 layers of the glitter vinyl at the edge. So this is how you would do it, and then you just need to stitch nice and close. I just need a different machine because this vinyl, which was from Spotlight, is not being friendly at all, which I don't understand why, because it did the ends just fine. And the machine's threaded, so I don't know. It's just one of those days. So I'm going to go do these on the other machine, and then I'll come right back and show you how to trim them down and attach them. Done. Turns out it wanted, you know, my high-powered walking foot. But essentially, you just want to stitch across there. Now I'm going to take my scissors, and I'm just going to cut right next to that line of stitching. Now, obviously, in a perfect world, I could have been able to show you this, but this machine doesn't like this particular vinyl, apparently. Shouldn't be an issue, though, because I don't think you can buy this at Spotlight anymore. And for me, this is the last piece. Even if it wasn't, I would then just know to only stitch it on the other machine. It was a bit weird. I'm also going to trim off all these tails that I have going on from all the failed attempts. Like that. And then I'm going to take a cigarette lighter and just singe off all of those ends so that they are not sticking up and annoying me. Right, so there's a handle. Let us do the same to this one. Trim out all of the tails where possible, and then singe them. And then we're just going to go, I'm going to trim all of this down so there's just a little bit past the stitches. You don't want to be right on top of them because then they'll come out and then you would have wasted your whole strap. Right, and so then it'll bend like that, and voila, one handle. Push all of that into the bin, all the tails. Right, I'm gonna grab our bag, and I'm gonna put this up and around, and it's gonna go in there. So I just need to know where to put my holes in my handles, which is on the end in the center there, and then one up there. So I just did that by eye, but I'm sure the pattern has an actual measurement for you. I also need rivets, so I'm going to put some rivets in this to hold the handles on. And there. We're also gonna need the other one that does the rivet punch. Shocker, I know. So we are gonna go up and in this way, And so then this is going to kind of squish into the handle so that the raw edge, and I'll show you what that looks like. So the raw edge gets tucked in like that. And then we just need some rivets. So let me grab the rivets and then we'll be right to go. So I keep my heads and my tail, my tops and my bottoms in separate containers. It does just make it a bit easier. So we're going to push the rivet, through. Now you can go front to back or back to front, whichever's going to work best for you. And then I'm going to put the cap on inside like that. Now I might need to bring this to the edge of the table to then squish that down. That's one rivet in. So then we're going to come around, we're going to push it up and in like that, and then I'm going to put a rivet up into the handle like so, and then I'm going to fold this around and up, and I'm going to push the ends of this up into the handle like so, and then we're going to squish that on, and I'm going to bring this forward again. One day in my dream studio, these are going to be bolted to a table and they're going to hang off the edge like so. And they're going to make my life so much easier. But until then, so these stick out through there like that. So again, we're just going to go up one side, pull it through. What are you doing in there? And then push it. I'm personally finding it easier to go from the outside into the curve, but if you want to put your rivets the other way, that is also perfectly fine. There's no rule that says the other way won't work for you better. This is just what works for me better. So again, put a cap on, squish it down, bring it to the edge so I can get in there nice and easy, and squish it. And then again, we're going to bring this around and up, because you don't want to get any twists, and that's the way I find it easiest to get it without twists. Pull it, put a cap in the back, and then squish it up, and then tuck those edges into the handle. You could also put edge coat on that raw edge if you so desired. Then the bag is done. How freaking adorable is that? I love it. So the sides kind of tuck in a little bit, but all in all, that is very, very cute. And it's got bag feet. So that's a nice little handbag. In this glitter vinyl and this print, it's feeling very rockabilly to me, but I like it. So there you go. That is the bag all finished. And again, if you wanted to, you could have had that slip pocket on the outside, but instead I've popped it on the inside. Now see how this is all a little bit kind of funny? What you need to do, and I always stand up to do this, you want to be over your bag and you want to push the base down, and then you want to go out and then down again, and already that's sitting better. Now I still need to use my small iron to iron that to the edges, but that's a nice inside. And then we just go over and down. This is also a nice little safety flap we've got going on here, because your handle has to go through it, so it's less likely for things to fall out. But that's a nice little like arm bag right there. If you want it as a shoulder bag, you obviously just extend the handles to make them a lot taller, but that's kind of where that one's at there. So thank you for joining me, and I hope this tutorial was somewhat informative for you, and I'll see you